Okay, so I think I found an interesting and really odd little quirk. And that is if the flight sim is focused, or if I am focused on the flight sim, my whole computer has issues. If the flight sim is not the main focus, then everything seems to work decently well. So that's curious. I'm curious as to why that seems to be the case, but you know. So let me just move my mouse out of the way, and essentially, if I don't use the mouse, everything should be good. All right, let's get back into it. So that took us quite some time to fix and get over, but let me at least try and get some flying in. Okay, just pulling up my seat here. And let me just double check once more that everything looks fine on the stream before I get distracted and start flying away. Okay, everything is good now. So let's just get into it. I don't know, to me that's really, really odd. It's really, really odd. But I guess the mouse or just something going on with Flight Sim. Once my mouse is kind of on the game, it's just disaster. All right. Now that has been fixed and that's wasted about 40 minutes of our stream time, let's at least try to do some taxiing. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to turn right on, I believe it's Alpha, go all the way down, do some taxi practice, and then we're going to turn around, come back here, and then we're going to go on to turn left onto Alpha. So just turn left there. Fortunately, I don't have the mouse, so I can't necessarily point at it and show you. But Alpha is just the taxiway just right in front of us. And then that holding point there right in front of the runway should be Golf. And so that's what we'll be doing. So let's get this show on the road. Okay, so so many issues with Flight Sim and VR, and you add streaming on top of it. It's a terrible idea. Why did I get into this? Okay, so I'm just going to power up to about 1200, just so the airplane can start moving forward. And now that it's started to move forward, I'm going to power back to just below 1000 RPM. And power back just a little bit because we're beginning to pick up some unnecessary speed. So if I look out the window, essentially what one tip that I got was when you're taxiing, you shouldn't be going faster.
Leave the apron by taking the taxiway on your left, then make a left turn onto Alpha, the main parallel taxiway. before taking the first right to hold short of the runway.
I completely forgot he was here. So yeah, I mean, we're not necessarily going to do that. What we're going to be doing is, again, we're going to be turning right here, just so at least we can get some taxi practice in before we get up into the air. So I will just turn here and just go down, just try to maintain a decent enough speed. So as I was saying, one of the tips that I got was to, just take a look outside your window, see whether or not, or just gauge how fast you're going. You shouldn't be going faster than a brisk walking pace. And so I think this is a pretty good enough. I think this is a decent pace to be taxiing at. It's not too fast, not too slow. And while I do this, just maintain center line. Don't look in front of me though. Look all the way down towards the end. Again, I would show you if I have the mouse, but I don't. Just look all the way down towards the end. Just let the plane kind of trust that the plane will get there. If you just trust the plane will get there really, and you and your brain will kind of do all the work to ensure the plane gets there. So that way you do not stress out. What is that on the taxiway? Is that a car? Oh, I didn't know that this was a regional airport. I had no clue there were jets here. Okay, so I guess there's a car. So we will give it some space. So weird. But again, it's flight sim. What can you do? Is that just the one plane that's here? That's a little odd. Oh no, I think there's more. I think there's more parked back behind there. Okay, so we're approaching the end. I think yeah. There's not really too much more to say. It's quite simple, really. Just make sure that you're not going too fast during your taxi, and it's really not. It's not as difficult as I thought it would be to taxi. It's actually a lot simpler. So why I struggle taxiing both in the sim and in real life, or at least why I used to struggle taxiing in the sim, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why. Maybe you just lack of practice or something. So there's just the one plane here. Yeah, looks like it's a fairly it's not a very commonly used airport. What is this? This is about 800 RPM. So I like this speed. I like this. So I powered up to about what was it, 1200 until the plane started to move, and then as soon as it started to move, I powered back to about 800 RPM. Okay. So I'm just getting a feel for the plane and just a feel for what settings would work. So I think it's a pretty good setting. I haven't really had to touch the throttle ever since we set our power. Sorry, ever since I haven't had to touch the throttle this whole time while I've been taxiing. Kind of just been focused on taxiing. So let's try to make a sharp turn here. We'll need some more throttle, so let's do 1200 once again. Let's have the plane. Yeah, I don't know if this is... So this is my first time playing with the Quest and my first time streaming with it. Probably should have played before I started streaming, but I didn't really have too much time to play when I got it. I just got this yesterday too. But one thing I'm noticing that makes this very different from the Reverb is, I don't know, there's a really weird effect on the ground. It's like it's shimmering a little bit, and it's a little distracting, but I guess I'll just get used to it. But in terms of, everything else, to me, I like this a little bit better than the Reverb, I'll be very honest. For streaming, it has a stabilizing feature. The sweet spot is a lot larger on the Quest 2 than it is on the Reverb. And so to me, this is essentially most of the time what I'm seeing out of the headset. This is what I see out of the Reverb most of the time anyways. I very rarely am able to dial it to and see that sweet spot. I don't know why. I've tried everything I possibly could and it just does not work for me. And so, I can read all these instruments without having to zoom in. The only thing I can't really read is, so I see the warning sign there. I just can't read the small text that's below it. But I don't. Again, I think even in real life, I would probably zoom in to see that. So to me, this looks just as fine. Like fuel quantity, oil temperature, oil pressure, nose down, nose up, like elevator trim. I can read everything perfectly from here. So, I think I was expecting there to be more of a downgrade when I picked up the Quest 2, but to be honest, not really much. The only thing I will complain about is I can't see out in the distance, which I guess, so I can see the caution, but I can't read the text below it. Sometimes I have a hard time reading the taxi signs unless I am quite close to them, but it's not really, it's a minor complaint, I'll say. So as I'm getting close to the runway, let me just go back into, hopefully I don't break anything. Let's see if I can pull up chat really quickly. I should have been... Okay, I guess not. So we will have to do this another way then. Wait, hold up. Are we still in the same? Oh, okay, no, I know where we're at right now. We still have. Wow, this was a pretty big airport, or at least bigger than I expected it to be. Okay, so let me just try to see if I can quickly take a look at chat. Okay, there's not much going on there, so I will just get to... I'll get to our holding point. We will just do a recap of the takeoff. There's not really much to say or to talk about taxiing. It seems to be quite taxiing in the sim now, thanks to Reddit, is actually a lot easier. What I find works once again is I will as soon as the parking brakes are released, I will increase speed up to about, say, 1200. You know what? Let me show you guys. I'll just go back into the apron and then I'll do a quick demo. hopefully my mouse is not in the sim. I think I was actually going a little too fast there. But hey, I will continue to learn and continue to get better. Yeah, that effect on the ground is really annoying me. Okay. So as I was saying, taxiing is quite simple. Thanks to Reddit, all I do, once you release the brakes, after you set your sensitivity curve for the rudders to an S curve, I will power up to say about 1200 or so RPM, and then once the plane starts to move, power back to about 800 RPM or so, and I find that, of course, right now it won't work. Go back up to 1200. Let's let the plane move just a little bit more, and then once we start moving, let's power back to 800. And this is a pretty decent taxi speed, really. Not really much more that you need than this. And so let's continue with the lesson. I hope the plugin is still working.
Take this right and hold at golf.
He sounds so tired. He sounds so tired. So fed up with our 30-minute taxi.
Good, now come to a stop before the holding line and we'll tell ATC we're ready to go. We say ready for departure as we only use the word takeoff as part of an actual takeoff clearance to avoid misunderstandings.
Okay.
Golf Alpha Charlie ready for departure.
Golf Alpha Charlie cleared line up and take off, runway 27, wind 260 at 4.
Cleared line up and take off, runway 27, Golf Alpha Charlie. We're cleared for takeoff. Pull onto the runway, line up on the centre line and we'll depart.
Oops, wrong button. Okay, let's get going.
Keep the nose straight down the centre line and apply full power.
Okay, and there we are.
Use some right rudder to counteract the engine torque to keep straight on the centre line.
Yep.
Smoothly pull back and raise the nose, engine cowling on the horizon.
And there we are.
But now hold the climb attitude and keep climbing straight ahead.
Apply some trim.
Now we're safely climbing away, we don't need our flaps anymore. Please retract the flaps and we'll climb more efficiently.
Okay, flaps up.
See how the nose drops as we lose lift? Add some back pressure on the controls to hold the climb attitude. Accelerate to 80 knots and we'll get the lift back. Great, keep full power and adjust the attitude to control your speed. Aim for 80 knots. If you get slow, lower the nose slightly. If you get fast, raise the nose slightly.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say about tips that I got for takeoff. It's pretty much self-explanatory. Once you apply full pressure.
Now turn right to follow the Mersey River northbound.
Yeah. So once you're, on the runway, just just apply full throttle and just barrel down the
Continue
runway.
flying up the Mersey, climbing to 1,400 feet. Try to memorize this climbing attitude.
Okay, let's just get to 1,500.
Level off 1,400 feet, keeping full power to accelerate to 100 knots.
Let me just level out. And then...
As our increased airspeed gives more lift, feel how you need to push forwards to remain level. To relieve this input, trim nose down until you don't need to apply any control force to stay straight and level. Now you can power back a little to hold 100 knots. Maintain 1,400 feet up the Mersey, staying over the water.
Okay. So yeah, once you're on the runway, just apply full pressure, go down, make minor adjustments, just so you don't have to make major overcorrections. So that you don't end up making overcorrections, which are as a result of you making major rudder adjustments while trying to maintain centerline on takeoff roll. On takeoff roll, power back. Again, make sure that your engine cowling is kind of on the horizon, as I did earlier during my takeoff roll, and that will give you a decent climb out rate, at least in the Cessna 152, where it's easy to see the engine cowling. In other planes, you kind of just have to. It's essentially the same concept. Some of them you may not be able to see it perfectly, but you should familiarize yourself with that climb attitude. In terms of trim again, make sure you set your attitude first and then trim for that attitude, rather than just using trim or quote unquote flying with trim. And so that's a bad habit that you can learn while flying in simulators. So you want to make sure that you use your yoke, set the correct attitude or set the attitude that you want, and then use the trim. When you are on all flight level changes, use PAT. So set power first, and then attitude, and then throttle. Except for when you are leveling out after a climb, in which case you use the APT, or basically it's just the same thing, but now because you want to speed up after your climb, you leave the throttle alone. So you set your attitude first, then your power, and then your trim.
Golf Alpha Charlie, contact Liverpool radar 119.85.
11985 Golf Alpha Charlie. We're being handed over to Liverpool Approach Control now, who we'll be in contact with until we leave controlled airspace at Seaforth. Liverpool radar Golf Foxtrot Sierra Alpha Charlie, live buildings 1,400 feet to Seaforth VFR.
Golf Alpha Charlie Roger, report Seaforth.
Wilco Golf Alpha Charlie. Seaforth is the exit point for VFR traffic departing Liverpool to the north. It's found on the east shoreline, just beyond where the western shoreline ends. Keep heading north for now up the Mersey. Now we need to maintain 1,400 feet.
Okay, and so here's another great or tip or lesson that I learned again. So throttle controls altitude, so you want to descend. So I'm just going to pull back on the throttle and just let the plane kind of do its thing and just descend. I will make some corrections though with the flight yoke, just to make sure we're not make sure the plane doesn't go crazy and get away from me. Staying level while in flight sim, there's no real method for that. It's just a thing where you just have to play around with until you kind of get better understand, especially with VR, especially with like different setups. It's a little tough to just have one standard metric for how to stay level in flight sim. So unfortunately, it's just one of those things where you kind of just have to practice a little bit and just get a feel for what.
Use throttle to control your speed and maintain 100 knots.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you just have to practice and just see what it looks like for, while the plane is straight and level, what does the attitude or what does it look like when you stare out outside of the cockpit and onto the horizon. So that's that. Let's get back to 2300.
Golf Alpha Charlie, Seaforth outbound. Request basic service.
Golf Alpha Charlie Roger, basic service.
Basic service, Golf Alpha Charlie. Now we've reached the edge of the Liverpool control zone at 1,400 feet. We're entering uncontrolled airspace. There is airspace above us, which begins at 3,500 feet upwards, so anything below that is uncontrolled. It's completely up to us to navigate and avoid other traffic. UK ATC can provide either a basic service or a traffic service to VFR flights in uncontrolled airspace. We've been given a basic service from ATC, which means they can pass us important information such as airfield closures or severe weather, but won't provide any clearances or traffic information. Depending on their workload, they may be able to provide a traffic service, where they will also give information about any known nearby traffic to help you, but will not provide avoidance instructions. Keep flying north, and as you did before, apply full power, set the climb attitude, and climb to 3,000 feet.
Okay, and so again, we're about to climb. So PAT, power, we're going to set it for climb. Attitude, we will pull back. Again, engine cowling to the horizon. And then trim, we will trim just so our plane maintains this attitude without us having to...
The speed will come back towards around 80 knots, so with the lower speed we lose lift and the nose will want to drop. Apply nose up trim to neutralize the control pressure, holding the climb attitude all the time.
Yeah, so as he said, when you trim yourself out, that basically allows the plane to maintain that attitude without you having to pull back on the yoke. So just a little bit more. We're almost there, almost trimmed out, and that should be good enough. And so now, can't see my hands, but they're waving around. Actually, I do have to just bank a little bit. But yeah, and so we're just gonna climb away until we get to about 3,000. Let me just quickly check if there's anything happening on chat. Nope. Okay.
Start levelling off and maintain 3,000 feet. Accelerate again to 100 knots.
Okay, so once again, APT, because we're coming
Again, as
out.
we accelerate, trim nose down to cancel out the control pressure.
We're coming off of a climb. Power back. First we reach 100 knots, and then just trim just to maintain this attitude. A little bit more trim.
As we're now higher up, the air is thinner, so to preserve the optimal fuel-to-air ratio of the engine, we'll reduce the fuel mixture slightly. Use the red mixture control next to the throttle and pull it back only about a centimetre or so, and see how the engine revs rise as the engine is running more efficiently.
Yeah, so again, just pull it back. And then once the RPM starts to drop, that's around kind of where you want to leave it. So I will leave it just there. It's another one of those inexact sciences, especially in the 152 and the 182 and other planes. There are.
Let's try a few turns.
The
We only want to bank to about 20 degrees for a gentle turn, which is the second white mark around the top of the attitude indicator. Start a right turn towards east, heading 090.
Okay. And so in order to maintain, and this was something I was struggling with a lot last week, in order to stay level during turns, just track the horizon. So just keep an eye on the horizon, keep an eye on where it is and what it looks like. And then while you do your turn, just make sure that the horizon kind of stays at that level. And so I'm just going to pull back ever so slightly, bank a little bit more. And here we are. So I am pretty much, I still need to practice just a little bit more, but I'm pretty much staying level while going into my turn, and we should be leveling off, or we should be rolling out soon.
I'd like you to be making a right turn to east. Stop your turn on 090 and set the straight and level attitude again.
Okay, and boom, we were somewhere around this altitude, and so we really didn't gain or lose much altitude during that turn at all, which is ideal and which is what you want to happen. So we're climbing a little bit. I'm just gonna leave it, let it climb up to about 3,000, and we should be good.
When turning, use gentle rudder inputs to keep the black ball on the turn coordinator centered for comfortable and efficient turning. Make a coordinated right turn to west, heading 270, keeping the ball centered.
Okay, so we're going to be going 270, which is essentially 180. So just check around, make sure there's no traffic. Again, track the horizon, see where it is, make my turn. The nose is starting to dip slightly, so I will pull back and just continue like this. Add some rudder. The only issue, once again, is once we kind of get into that sunny area, I can't really see. So
as we turn, the lift from our wings isn't pointing straight upwards anymore, so to stay at our altitude, we need to increase the angle of attack slightly to get some extra lift. You can feel this as the need to hold back pressure on the elevator.
So just double checking, making sure we are, or we won't
Roll out on heading west and set us back to straight and level.
Okay. Roll out onto heading west, and boom, there we are. Okay. And so, you know, we climbed a little bit, but it was mainly just because the sun there, and I couldn't really see where the horizon was. But I mean, in all honesty, we maybe gained 500 feet, which really isn't that bad.
Next, we'll try a speed change to see how it influences our straight and level sight picture. Bring the power right back to idle and decelerate to 60 knots.
Okay, again, track the horizon.
As we lose lift, trim nose up to keep the control pressures neutralised. You'll need to raise the nose slightly to increase our angle of attack to make up for the lost airspeed.
And just trim aggressively.
Set power for 60 knots and retrim for level flight.
I think we're almost there. Almost. Just a little bit more. And we should be good to go. Okay.
See that our new straight and level attitude has a higher nose. This is our slow flight attitude.
Okay, and there we are. Trimmed out. No, we're still descending a little bit, so adding a little bit more trim. Now we're climbing. Okay, there we are.
Now make a turn either to the left or the right, back to heading 090, keeping the ball centered.
So I'll make a turn to the right, because there's no sun on the right. And this time, though, it's a little easy to make my turn, because what I just want is I will just keep that nose on the horizon, and that should allow me to stay level, while, or at least the tip of the nose, while in my turn. And so, as you can see, we're pretty much descending just a little bit, so just have to pull up a little, and there we are. Just keep it pulled right after the turn. And
now accelerate us back to 100 knots, keeping straight and level throughout. Use some right rudder to counter the engine forces.
Okay. So now that we're going to be going at about 100 knots, we can set our normal attitude, and then just applying some trim just to make sure that this trim wheel is actually really slow. Maybe that's another sensitivity thing I have to adjust. I'm like, I'm going at the wheel, but it's barely moving anything in the sim, so. Okay, let me pour power back. Just trim a little bit more.
Fantastic. That concludes your first VFR lesson. Keep flying if you wish, or press escape to exit.
Okay, and so that's just a recap of what we did last week, plus a little bit of tips that or some tips that I have learned over the week through conversations with the flight sim community at Reddit. So that concludes that. Today, what we're going to do, or the new lesson that we're going to try, is the approach and then landing. So bear with me. Things will get a little choppy, as I will have to use the mouse to navigate around in flight sim. I should probably get an Xbox controller to navigate around without having to use my mouse. Perhaps. I'll just try to speed this up and keep my head as straight as possible to... Okay. And so, I really did want to pull up the PDF. The PDF... Okay, and so now move my mouse away. So I really didn't want to pull up the PDF. The PDF, should have or would have gone through at least some of the procedures and just given us an overview of exactly what it is we will be doing. But unfortunately, why are we descending? Unfortunately,
Welcome
I was not
back.
able to do
We're
that.
to the northwest of Liverpool, this time to look at descending, approach and landing. We're flying straight and level in uncontrolled airspace at 100 knots. Maintain heading 090 and slow to 60 knots, keeping altitude 2,400 feet.
Okay. 2,400. He wants us to maintain 60 knots. What I'm going to do really quickly is... Okay. I have to trim. I don't know why this is... A little bit more.
Hold an altitude of 2,400 feet.
Yeah, okay. I mean, when you gave me the plane, it was kind of out of control, so I need to get rid of these guys as well, and then just move the mouse out of the way. Okay, so let's
slow to 60 knots.
Let's hold the 2,400. Just trim down just a little bit. And then we will power back until we're at about that 60 knots. I think this is the Mercy, right? The same lake or whatever that we just took off from, and we came through here, and then we went to around there, and that's where we did our other flight procedures or training procedures. So let's power up to about 22,000 or so. 2,000. Nope. Well,
staying level at 2,400 feet, set flaps to 10 and see how the picture changes.
Okay, so first things first, I need to increase my flaps, decrease my speed.
Maintaining 2,400 feet, see how the nose is lower as the flaps have made the wing more effective.
Yeah.
Maintaining 2,400 feet, see how the nose is lower as the flaps have made the wing more effective.
This guy's really passive aggressive, eh? We're at 2,400 feet, man.
Now set flaps to 20 and see what changes. Keep the heading of east for now.
Man, you gave me too many instructions, man.
Flaps add both lift and drag, so you need a little extra power to hold your speed.
That's a good point.
Now accelerate to 80 knots.
Okay. This is I forget what it's called. But that's this is essentially the place where once you get over here, you or at least once we pass here in the first lesson, that's usually where he'll radio a tower and just say, hey, we're getting out of your airspace.
Now keep 80 knots and start a slow descent, only going down at about 400 feet per minute. Keep descending at 80 knots and 400 feet per minute. This is how we'll fly down the initial part of the approach.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why I'm having a little bit of trouble with my trim. Okay, that should be good. Okay, so yeah, I mean nothing too crazy so far, other than I was given an out of control airplane, and then bombarded with a whole bunch of different instructions, and then had some passive aggressive commentary. But I think we're back under control now. Again, 80 knots. We're just descending at about 300-400 feet per minute. And the most important thing I think I should be taking from this is kind of just the attitude, or just taking a look at the horizon. What
now
it looks
please
like.
maintain your rate of descent and extend full flaps.
And yeah, I guess it is a challenge once you extend flaps, just to see so what I'll do is, again, keeping an eye out on the horizon, I will extend full flaps, and then I will adjust accordingly. So full flaps, nose is about to go up.
Now that we've got full flaps, we have more lift and drag. Set and maintain a speed of 60 knots.
Okay,
good.
So
now holding 60 knots and a slow descent of 300 to 400 feet per minute. This is how we'd fly the end of the approach as we get close to landing. Get used to this attitude and power setting and keep descending further.
Okay, so I'm trimmed out, again around the same
So this is how things would look as we come in to land. But if things don't go well, we'd perform a go-around, where we apply full power and pitch up to start a climb. Make sure not to do this too aggressively, however.
Right. Oops. Going the wrong way with my trim. Okay. So this should be good enough. So yeah, I mean, I guess the most important thing that I learned and the most important skill. What is wrong with that? That just I don't know if you can see it, but the highway kind of just suddenly sinks in and then comes right back up. Huh. Anyhow, we're a little off our heading of east. Yeah, I mean, the most important thing that I learned from the first lesson was, and from tips and pieces of advice I got, was use the horizon more often. And so, when you're extending flaps, when you're turning, in order to maintain steady, or at least maintain the correct attitude.
Let's practice a go-around. Set full power now and set the climb attitude.
In order to maintain whatever it is you're doing, whether you're descending, whether you're you're climbing out, whether you're turning, if you want to stay level, if you want to stay climbing, if you want to stay descending, look at the horizon and
full power now.
Yeah, I am, and just use that as your point of reference. So
use some right rudder to stay straight and keep climbing. Set flaps to 20. set the flaps to 10. Finally, retract the flaps completely.
Okay, once again, you want your nose on the horizon.
Good. Climb to 1,400 feet and get yourself straight and level at 100 knots.
Okay, 1,400, we're almost there. And then, oops. And then we will maintain 100 knots.
Trim nose down to ease the control pressure as you stabilize at 100 knots with a straight and level attitude.
Okay, we're about 100, so I'm going to pull back to about 2,300 RPM. And once again, trim
Now we'll head back
down
to Liverpool and try a zone entry, approach and landing.
Woohoo!
Liverpool Golf Foxtrot Sierra Alpha Charlie, request VFR rejoin at Kirby.
Golf Alpha Charlie Liverpool radar, clear to enter controlled airspace at Kirby, not above 1,500 feet VFR. Squawk 5052, clearance limit, car factory.
Clear to enter, not above 1,500 feet VFR to car factory 5052, Golf Alpha Charlie. Turn right heading south. We're now looking to route to the car factory VRP, located just north of the airport.
We're going south. Okay.
Now continue south into the Liverpool control zone, and you'll soon begin to see the factory as a large flat industrial building near to the airport. Visual reference points, VRPs, are local landmarks that give points of reference to VFR flights to easily communicate their positions. Chosen for their standout features, VRPs are shown on VFR maps. ATC assigned us a squawk code, which is entered into the transponder to label us on the ATC radar screen.
Okay, so, well, I mean, I found something else that's interesting. I don't know what that is, if that's a skyscraper, or what that may be. But so as he's saying, we want to be on the lookout for the car factory, because that is a big structure that is close to the airport, and that will, just give us or allow us to visually.
On our way
navigate
back,
ourselves
let's
to
talk about the
airport.
aiming point. Once established on the approach, we pick a spot on the runway and try to lock that point in the same place on our windscreen all the way down. It could be runway numbers, a touchdown marking, or something else. Continue on this heading of south and you should be able to see the car factory soon.
So I'm still looking out for the car factory, and I will just provide some commentary on the aiming point once we're kind of on final and where we start to approach the runway for landing. The car factory. I don't see the car factory. Am I on the right heading? I am. I don't know. He's gonna help me out anyways, but I can't actually see this car factory. Unless it's... No, I can't see it. Okay, I think we're lost because he's not saying anything, and I know the airport is right before the river, so we have messed up somehow. And the fact that he's not saying anything is very, very worrying to me. Actually, where is the airport? Okay, so I think we're lost, but I will wait for the instructor to say we're lost, just to confirm that we truly are lost. But yeah, I mean, I can't see. I think I see a runway, and so that should be the car factory over there. Man, this guy's really annoying. He didn't say anything. He's just gonna let me continue flying all the way down here. So I found the car factory, or at least I found the runway. But let's just
head south towards the car factory.
Oh, shut up! It's right there. Okay, now I see the factory. Yeah, there were a lot of delays in me kind of following his instructions, and so that's why we veered off a little further than the plug-in expected. So that's why we weren't able to see the car factory. But so there's the runway we'll be landing on, and here this big building that I'm kind of taking a look at.
Golf Alpha Charlie, contact Liverpool Tower 126.355.
126.355 Golf Alpha Charlie. We'll report to ATC that we've reached our clearance limit, the car factory VRP. Golf Alpha Charlie, car factory.
Golf Alpha Charlie, make right orbit for traffic, call complete.
Right orbit, Wilco, Golf Alpha Charlie. Start a 360 turn, known as an orbit, to the right as instructed by ATC.
So here's one thing. I don't actually know what he means by that. I don't know what an orbit is. Is that just like a circuit?
The landing attitude will be just like what we saw earlier, which we used to fly down towards our aiming point. As we cross the runway threshold, move your gaze to the far end of the runway, and then use peripheral vision to judge your height. Then we'll pull the power back and raise the nose to the flare attitude, which is just enough to reduce your rate of descent, and touch down on the main gear first. Then we'll smoothly allow the nose wheel to land and let your speed fall off with the power still at idle.
Yeah, but you still haven't explained to me what an orbit is, so I will just guess and just assume we are entering the circuit. And so I will just enter here, making sure I won't hit any traffic. I don't know, he didn't tell me what to do. Okay, so I think this is what he wanted us to do. I think I may have broke it again because I should have gotten confirmation that we were finished our orbit. What the hell's an orbit anyways? See if chat has any insights for me as to what the heck an orbit is, because this guy's not saying anything and I don't know what to do. So not really, so I'll just have to try to figure this out on my own. You're really not going to say anything? Alright. Well, it's all good. I'll figure this out on my own, my friend. Okay, so once we get here, what they said was to do an orbit. So let's... I don't know what the heck that even means. So I will just do a right turn like this.
Maintain 1,400 feet.
Okay, but can you help me explain, or can you help me understand what an orbit is rather than yelling at me for attitude? Straight altitude. Give me attitude for altitude.
Golf Alpha Charlie, orbit complete.
Golf Alpha Charlie, enter right downwind, runway 27, number 1.
Right downwind, runway 27, Golf Alpha Charlie. Make a left turn here to fly heading 090, parallel to the runway. Descend down to 1,100 feet. Keep flying parallel at 1,100 feet until the runway threshold appears at a 45-degree angle behind you, over your right shoulder. I'll let you know when to turn.
Yeah, I think we're way past that, buddy.
Looking over your right shoulder, the threshold of the landing runway seems to be about 45 degrees behind us. Now's a good time to make our right-hand turn to start lining up with the runway. Start a gentle descent and start slowing to 80 knots.
I don't think this guy
Once
knows.
your speed is down to within the white arc, take flaps 10 and hold 80 knots. We're in the white arc now, so set flaps to 10. Hold the speed of 80 knots with a gradual descent. Now take flaps 20, speed still at 80 knots.
Okay, let me trim those down.
Golf Alpha Charlie cleared to land, runway 27, wind 250 at 4 knots.
Cleared land runway 27, Golf Alpha Charlie. Okay, we're cleared to land. Finally take flaps full and slow to 60 knots.
Okay, and so aiming point, as I was saying, or as I was trying to talk about before, is you just choose a point on the runway and you just fixate your eye on that one point. And as you come in for landing, if the point starts to move, or if the point starts to move up, that means that you are too low, and so you should pull up. If it starts to move down, that means that you are too high, and you should descend a little bit more. So for me, my aiming point is that the first, I forget what mark, but those vertical marks right after the numbers, that's my aiming point. And so once I hit about the numbers, then I will do a round out, which is basically just try to level off just a little bit, look towards the end of the runway, cut off the throttle, and just let the plane just glide its way to
power to idle and set the flare attitude.
So there we are. We're at the numbers. Round out. Gonna keep my eye on the end of the runway. Pull up. Try to keep the plane in the air for as long as I possibly can. And boom. There we are.
Stay on the centre line as you decelerate, then vacate at the first exit on your right.
Okay. So again, we're taxiing, or at least try to, let's just get to the place where we're going to be turning, and then I will talk about taxiing. So here looks like a good place to turn off. Where are the... Nah, I don't think I'm supposed to be turning like this, but hey.
Golf Alpha Charlie taxi via Alpha and link Kilo.
Alpha and Kilo, thank you, Golf Alpha Charlie. Now we're vacated, after landing checks, flaps up, transponder to standby.
Okay, so flaps up. Let's idle at about...
Well done, so we've looked at re-entering the control zone, entering the circuit, and making an approach and landing. Press escape to exit, and we'll move on to focusing on the circuit pattern.
Okay, so I guess the only thing for me that I just need to figure out is what in the world an orbit is, and I'll probably just have to do some of that approach practice again, because, well, I guess, with circuit training, you'll have to do some more approach practice, but just to get familiar with the speeds and just to make sure that the speed and the descent altitude are all under control. I'll just have to do some more approach practice. So I'll probably have to do that another week. I spent a lot of time just figuring out how to get the Quest set up properly just for this week's stream. So I'll take a look at it. Hopefully it's been a much more pleasant experience than watching raw VR footage from the Reverb G2. But hopefully next week there won't be as many technical difficulties to kind of to work through, and we'll spend some more time flying in. And hopefully I'll have the charts, or I'll have the PDF file that comes with FSAcademy, and we'll be able to reference that, take a look at it, and better understand the lessons and kind of go through some of the theory that's in that PDF. Because I can't necessarily, I could probably take a stab at explaining it, but it may be more beneficial, maybe more valuable if we go through the manual and explain it the exact way the manual has explained it. So with that being said, thank you all for joining today. Sorry for all the technical difficulties. Next week, we will continue flying. We'll continue learning the approach and do some more landing practice. So take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.